I had spent months planning the trip of a lifetime. Every detail, from the flights to the five-star hotel suites in Paris, Rome, and Barcelona, was meticulously organized. I wanted to give my parents a week of luxury, a reward for years of sacrifices, a memory they would cherish forever. I imagined their faces lighting up when I handed them the itinerary, the excitement building as the departure date neared. But nothing could have prepared me for the shock that hit me the morning I arrived at their house to drop off their passports. My parents were waiting, and so was my sister. "She's coming too," Mom said casually, sipping her coffee as if this were the most normal thing in the world. I blinked. "What? No, I've planned this entire trip for you too. Not for her." Dad shuffled uncomfortably, and I realized he had already anticipated my reaction. "She's jobless right now," he said slowly. "Thought she could use a little getaway." I felt my stomach twist. All my careful planning, all my savings, all my excitement, and she had waltzed in like she had every right to it. She smiled at me, that smug, self-satisfied smile, clearly relishing the chaos she'd caused. "You're being selfish," she said with perfect innocence. "They deserve family time, and you know I haven't had a vacation in years." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my meticulously planned itinerary into the fireplace. Instead, I forced a smile and said nothing, letting the silence weigh heavily between us. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a mistake or a lapse in judgment. My sister had always found subtle ways to insert herself into situations, to redirect attention, to manipulate outcomes in her favor. This deliberate intrusion into something I had painstakingly arranged felt like her ultimate power move. And that's when the unease settled in. It wasn't just the trip. It was her attitude, her entitlement, the way she thrived on my frustration. She was my sister, yes, but one who seemed intent on proving, in every possible way, that my success, my generosity, my careful planning didn't matter. I clenched my fists on the steering wheel. Deep down, I knew I couldn't let this slide. Not now. Not ever. Somewhere between Paris and Rome, I began to hatch a plan. Not just to reclaim the trip I had intended for my parents, but to teach my sister, once and for all, that actions have consequences. She thought she was clever, that she could waltz into my life and disrupt it at will. But she had no idea what was coming. The real question was, how far was I willing to go to turn this betrayal into a lesson she would never forget? And thus began my journey, not just across Europe, but toward reclaiming my power, my trip, and my satisfaction in the most dramatic way possible. The first day of the trip should have been magical. Paris, the city of lights, the Eiffel Tower glittering as the sun dipped below the horizon. But instead of the joy I imagined for my parents, I felt tension. Subtle, insidious, and unnerving. It started with small things. My sister monopolized the hotel's attention. She insisted on booking spa treatments at times that conflicted with my parents' excursions. She subtly suggested alternative restaurants, always the priciest ones, where she lingered over wine and dessert, while Mom and Dad looked hesitant but unwilling to upset her. Then came the secret calls. My sister would step away, phone pressed tightly to her ear, hushed laughter spilling out in bursts. I couldn't make out the other voice, but her smirk afterward made my stomach tighten. She was hiding something. I didn't know what, but the feeling that she was manipulating every moment grew heavier. Money became another battleground. She forgot her wallet multiple times, nudging me to cover for her. At first, it seemed harmless. I shrugged it off. After all, she was my sister. But it wasn't just money. She offered unsolicited advice to my parents, subtly questioning my planning. "Are you sure this itinerary works? I mean, maybe there's a better option." The tone was innocent, but the implication was clear. She was planting doubt. I began noticing favoritism, too. Mom and Dad laughed more readily at her jokes, hanging on her every word. During sightseeing tours, she always positioned herself front and center, capturing every photo, while I was relegated to the background. My parents didn't mean to, but their subtle admiration for her confidence, her charm, gnawed at me. By day 3, I could feel my patience fraying. I wanted to confront her, but every attempt at addressing the tension seemed to backfire. She smiled sweetly, shrugged innocently, or feigned ignorance. And my parents? They remained blissfully unaware of the calculated patterns. I began to feel a strain I hadn't anticipated. Not the physical exhaustion of travel, but a creeping mental fatigue. The kind that comes from watching someone manipulate your generosity and seeing the people you love inadvertently encouraged. I loved my sister, or at least I wanted to, but her presence, her actions, her subtle undermining were testing my limits. And still, the betrayal wasn't fully visible. Was she truly scheming? Or was I overreacting? The doubt gnawed at me, a constant whisper in the back of my mind. Yet every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. I found myself lying awake at night, staring at the hotel ceiling, replaying her words, her gestures, her sly smiles. There was something beneath the surface, something I couldn't yet name, but I knew it would surface soon. And when it did, I had to be ready. By the 4th day in Rome, the tension that had been simmering finally boiled over. It wasn't the secret calls, the favoritism, or the subtle financial manipulations that confirmed my worst fears. It was the message from Mom that made my chest tighten and my hands shake. "Your sister spoke to us about the trip budget," it read. "She convinced us to let her take over your contribution. She's handling the payments now." I read it twice. No, it couldn't be real. I had funded this entire trip from my savings, every euro meticulously accounted for, every hotel booked, every ticket purchased. My generosity, my planning had been hijacked. My parents, unknowingly manipulated, had relinquished control to my sister. I felt a surge of disbelief, then heartbreak, then raw, unfiltered rage. How could someone I trusted so completely, someone I had loved and protected my entire life, betray me so effortlessly? The sinking feeling of being blindsided was suffocating. My sister's smile when she noticed my reaction only made it worse. That smug look, the one I'd seen countless times before, now cut deeper than any words could. I confronted her privately by the Trevi Fountain, the crowds around us oblivious to the storm brewing between us. "How could you?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper, yet trembling with fury. This trip was for our parents. Every euro, every detail was mine. She laughed, a cold, hollow sound that made me flinch. "Oh, come on," she said smoothly. "You're too controlling. I was just helping." Mom and Dad agreed. They liked my plan better anyway. Helping, her idea of helping, was taking control of my hard-earned generosity, rewriting the rules of a gift I had meticulously prepared. She had turned a celebration into her playground, and my parents had unknowingly cheered her on. I walked away from her that afternoon, my heart pounding with disbelief. I could feel every ounce of betrayal coursing through my veins. I had always thought our sibling rivalry was harmless, just teasing and small competitions. But this was deliberate. This was calculated. My sister had exploited my generosity, my trust, and my love for our parents, all for her own gain. Yet as the sun set over the Roman skyline, a new feeling began to creep in alongside the anger: determination. The betrayal hurt, yes, but it also revealed something I hadn't fully realized until now. She had underestimated me. She thought I would stay silent, let her triumph, let her rewrite my plans without consequence. But I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not now, not ever. And as I stared at the orange glow over the Colosseum, a plan began to form in my mind. I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. Not just the trip, but my pride, my authority, and the respect she had tried to strip away. The question now wasn't whether I would act. It was when, and how dramatically I would ensure she never tried something like this again. The betrayal lingered like a shadow as I wandered through the narrow streets of Florence, the city alive with the golden glow of evening lights. I kept replaying the confrontation at the Trevi Fountain in my head. My sister's smug smile, my parents' unsuspecting trust, The way she had turned my generosity into her personal stage. The anger burned, yes, but now something stronger began to emerge. Clarity. For too long, I had let my sister's manipulations slide. Too often, I had ignored her subtle jabs, her sly interjections, her attempts to undermine me. I had thought family meant unconditional patience, that loyalty demanded silence, that love required tolerance. But in that moment, walking past artisan shops and crowded piazzas, I realized loyalty doesn't mean surrender, and patience doesn't mean being a doormat. The trigger came unexpectedly. I passed a small jewelry shop and caught a reflection of myself in the window. My posture was rigid, my jaw tight. The reflection staring back wasn't someone powerless. It was someone poised for action. Someone who had been wronged, yes, but someone who also had the strength, intelligence, and creativity to reclaim control. It hit me like a jolt of electricity. I wouldn't allow my sister to take this trip, my efforts, or my dignity. I wouldn't just sit by and let her rewrite the story I had spent months crafting. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of spite. It was about justice, about reclaiming what was rightfully mine and teaching her that manipulation has consequences. By the time I returned to the hotel, the plan was already forming in my mind. I would observe, gather evidence, and prepare. I wouldn't confront her blindly again. No, this would be calculated, precise, and undeniable. She needed to understand that while she could take advantage of unsuspecting hearts, she could not outsmart someone who had learned from every slight, every lie, every subtle jab. I felt a surge of energy I hadn't known I possessed. Anger had transformed into focus. Pain had sharpened into strategy. The betrayal that had once paralyzed me now fueled a relentless determination. I was no longer the hurt sibling, the generous planner overshadowed by entitlement. I was the orchestrator of a comeback, a force she hadn't anticipated. And as I looked out at the Tuscan skyline that evening, I whispered to myself, "This ends on my terms." From that moment forward, every step I took on this trip wasn't just sightseeing. It was preparation. Every conversation, every interaction, every subtle observation became a piece of the puzzle. My sister thought she had won, but she had only awakened a resolve that would not be ignored. The journey had shifted. It was no longer just about a luxurious trip or an ungrateful sister. It was about reclaiming power, respect, and justice, and I was ready to see it through. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of pain anymore, but because of purpose. For the first time since the betrayal, my heartbeat felt steady, focused, sharp. Every memory of what they did to me didn't crush me now. It fueled me. If they thought I would stay broken, they had no idea what I had become. The first step was proof. Real, undeniable, trap-tight proof. I began quietly digging into every message, every deleted file, every conversation I had ignored while drowning in trust. And suddenly, pieces started falling into place. Hidden patterns, odd dates, deleted media that wasn't completely erased. It was all still there, waiting for someone brave enough to connect it. I bought a small external drive and began storing everything. Screenshots, call logs, email threads. Jitni der wa log sakti rhy kamain ubi duki ho karchup betha hu. Utni der main unki barbad hon ki kahani leak rahada. But proof alone wasn't enough. I needed a trap. So, I pretended to go silent, no texts, no reactions, no hints. The type of silence that makes guilty people nervous. And it worked. Within 2 days, the first message came. "Are you okay? You've been distant." I smiled at my screen. "Good. Let them worry." I replied slowly, carefully, like someone trying to move on. They relaxed. They thought they still had control. They thought I was weak. Meanwhile, I was studying their patterns, learning when they lied, how they panicked, what they feared. The second step was exposing their lies. There was one person, someone they had tried to manipulate, someone who deserved to know the truth. I reached out. At first, they didn't believe me, but when I shared the evidence, the silence on the call said everything. "Send me everything," they whispered, voice shaking with anger. That's when I knew. This wasn't just my fight anymore. This was justice finally waking up. Now the plan was almost ready, but I wanted one final move. Something poetic. Something that would strike exactly at the heart of their ego. So I created a situation they could not resist. A perfect setup. A moment where their hunger for attention, praise, and control would blind them completely. I invited them somewhere they would feel safe, powerful even. I used the same words they once used to manipulate me, and they fell for it instantly. The villains still believed they were winning, but they had no idea that every step they took was exactly where I wanted them. No idea that the stage was already built. No idea that the spotlight was about to burn them. As I finalized the last part of the plan, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't broken. I was ready. Because revenge, the kind that brings truth to light, requires patience. And my patience had finally become my weapon. The day of the final confrontation arrived quietly, too quietly. A stillness in the air, like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for justice to unfold. I reached the venue early. It wasn't fancy, but it was symbolic. The same place where they first lied to me with a smile. Today, that smile would finally crack. Every detail of my plan was in motion. Every piece of evidence backed up. Every person who needed to know knew enough to be watching closely. All that remained was the villain. And they arrived exactly like I predicted. Overconfident, rehearsed, dripping with fake concern. There you are, they said, wearing that same mask I once fell for. I've missed you. Let's talk things out. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic how predictable they were. I kept my expression soft, vulnerable. Yeah, I think it's time. They relaxed instantly, believing the act. Believing I had come crawling back. Believing they still controlled the narrative. Perfect. I waited until they talked themselves into a corner. Bragging, lying, twisting the story in their favor. Every sentence they spoke was exactly what I needed. Because everything was being recorded. Clear audio. Clear video. Clear confession. When they finished their dramatic monologue, I simply tilted my head and smiled. A real smile sharp enough to cut. You done? Confusion flickered in their eyes. Excuse me? I leaned back. I just wanted to make sure you said everything clearly. For the people watching, their face drained of color. Before they could react, the door opened, and in walked the one person they feared the most. The same one I had shown the proof to. Their expression was pure fury. You lied to me, they said. To all of us. The villain froze, cornered, exposed, choking on their own falsehoods. And then the others appeared. Not many, just enough. Enough witnesses to destroy every lie they had built. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. All their messages, all their manipulation, all their double-dealing, projected on the screen behind me. The villain's legs buckled. Stop. Please listen. I can explain. No. I interrupted, my voice calm, steady. You've been explaining your whole life. Today you get to listen. And they did. Every minute felt like a lifetime for them. Every truth felt like a blade cutting through their ego. When it was done, they tried one last attempt. Fake tears, fake apologies, but no one believed them anymore. Their mask was gone. Their power was gone. Their control was gone. The final blow came not from me, but from the person they had betrayed the most. We're done. Everyone will know exactly who you are. The villain collapsed into a chair, defeated completely and finally. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because they were destroyed, but because I was free. Revenge wasn't about hurting them. It was about reclaiming myself. And today, I did. The air felt different the next morning. Lighter, cleaner, the kind of calm that only comes after a storm has passed. The house was quiet. No schemes, no whispers, no subtle manipulations hiding in corners. Just the truth, shining brightly, undeniable. The villain was gone. Not just physically removed from the space, but stripped of their power, their lies exposed to everyone who mattered. Family, friends, colleagues, they all knew the reality now. And for the first time in months, I felt a freedom I hadn't allowed myself to enjoy before. I walked through the rooms of my home, the space I had once shared with deceit and tension, and smiled. Every object, every corner, now reflected my own efforts, my own choices, and my own victories. The betrayal that had once crushed me had been transformed into clarity, strength, and justice. The aftermath wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about boundaries, accountability, and self-respect. My sister's arrogance and my parents' blind trust had collided with the force of truth, and in that collision, justice emerged. Watching the villain face the consequences of their actions was almost cinematic. The shock, the disbelief, the quiet despair as their carefully constructed world crumbled. But more importantly, I was stronger, wiser, more in tune with my own worth, no longer willing to be manipulated or underestimated. I had learned how to observe, plan, and act, not from malice, but from necessity. The experience had honed my resolve, sharpened my instincts, and reminded me that respect isn't given, it's earned. And in that moment, a poetic justice unfolded, the kind that makes your spine tingle. The person who had tried to overshadow me in every aspect of life had been undone by their own hubris, leaving me standing tall while they were left scrambling to salvage what little dignity remained. I turned to the camera and spoke directly, as I always did in my videos. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Felt powerless as they tried to take what was yours? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And remember, the key isn't just to fight back. It's to rise stronger than you ever imagined. Subscribe if you believe in standing up for yourself, because justice doesn't wait for the reckless. It rewards the patient, the smart, and the determined. And as the final sunlight streamed through the windows, I whispered quietly to myself, the truth always finds a way, the unearned power always falls, and those who betray eventually become their own undoing.